13 trillion, that is not a projection for the future. That is not a worst case scenario. That is the actual debt existing in the world right now, confirmed by the Institute of International Finance. Now, here is the part that should make your stomach drop. The entire world economy, everything every human on Earth produces in a year, is only worth about $105 trillion. We owe 3 times more than we make. Think about that. If every worker on the planet gave 100% of their salary, every factory gave 100% of its profit, and we consume nothing, no food, no energy, it would still take us 3 years to pay this off, but we aren't paying it off. We are borrowing more just to pay the interest. While this financial nuclear bomb is ticking, silver is sitting at $64 an ounce. You want to know why that matters? Because we have seen this movie before. Not once, not twice. We have watched this exact sequence play out across every major civilization in human history. And right now, we are in Act 3 of a 4-act play that always ends the same way. This isn't economics. This is a crime scene, and the weapon is the currency itself. Most people refuse to believe that something this simple could bring down the entire system. That normalcy bias is what will destroy them. We are about to walk through the 4 acts of collapse. By the end of this video, you will understand why $64 silver isn't a price. It's a mistake in the matrix that is about to be corrected. The algorithm suppresses collapse content because it scares the consumers. We need to hit 1,000 subscribers to signal that you want the hard truth, not the soft lie. Subscribe now. Let's start the clock. Let me show you the pattern. It is simple, almost too simple. That's what makes it dangerous. Act 1 always begins with real money. In Rome, it was the silver denarius. It was 95% pure silver. It was honest. When a soldier was paid, he knew he held actual wealth. This created trust, and on that trust, Rome built the greatest empire the world had ever seen. But then comes Act 2. The government needs more than it earns. Enter Emperor Nero in 64 AD. Rome is burning. Wars are expensive. The treasury is empty. Nero faces a choice. Cut spending? Painful. Or cheat? Easy. He chooses the cheat. He lowers the silver content of the denarius to 80%. Same face on the coin. Same legal value, but less silver. Nobody noticed at first. It felt like free money. But once you start the cheat, you cannot stop. By 197 AD, Emperor Septimius Severus needs to bribe his army. He cuts the silver to 46%. By 260 AD, under Emperor Gallienus, the coin has collapsed. It is now only 5% silver. What was once a piece of wealth is now a slug of bronze with a thin wash of silver paint. This brings us to Act 3, the reality check. The illusion breaks. The Roman soldiers, the backbone of the empire, refused to accept the coins. They demanded payment in salt, leather, or gold. Merchants hoarded the old, real silver coins and spent the bad ones. Prices exploded. The economy fractured. Rome didn't fall because of barbarians at the gate. It fell because it hollowed out its own foundation. This isn't ancient history. Rome was the superpower of its day, just like America is today. They had the strongest military, the best engineers, and the deepest markets. They thought they were immune to math. They were wrong. And if you think the US dollar, which has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1913, is different from the denarius, you are betting against 2,000 years of evidence. Module 3 timestamp 8 Hunkwok, the Weimar speed run, the wheelbarrow. If Rome was the slow death, this next example was the speed run. Let's jump to Germany, 1914. Germany abandons the gold standard to fight World War I. They are certain they will win and make the losers pay. They lose. The Treaty of Versailles hits them with 132 billion gold marks in reparations. In today's money, that is $500 billion. The new government wants to keep voters happy. They want to rebuild, but they are broke, so they hit print. Act 2 moves terrifyingly fast. In 1914, 4 marks bought you $1. The currency was strong. By 1922, cracks appeared. It took 7,000 marks to buy $1. Bad, but manageable. Then came 1923. The printing press went into overdrive. Act 3 arrived like a tsunami. By June, it was 192,000 marks to the dollar. By November, it was 4.2 trillion marks to the dollar. Stories from this time sound like fiction, but they are historical fact. People carried wheelbarrows of cash just to buy bread. A student ordered a cup of coffee for 5,000 marks. Before he finished drinking it, the price rose to 8,000 marks. Workers were paid twice a day, at lunch and at dinner, because if they waited until the end of the day, their morning wages would be worthless. Then came Act 4, the reset. On November 15, 1923, the government introduced the Renton mark. They deleted the zeros. 1 trillion old marks became 1 new mark. The currency stabilized, but the damage was done. The middle class was annihilated. Their life savings were wiped out in months. The desperation from this economic collapse paved the way for the rise of Hitler just a decade later. Here is the chilling part. Germany wasn't a banana republic. They had the best engineers, the best scientists, and the most educated population on Earth. They thought they could outsmart the math. They failed. And if you think America is smarter than 1920s Germany, look at what happened in 1971. That is when we started our own Act 2. Module 4 timestamp. 11:30. The 1971 betrayal, the day money died. Now let's look at the United States. For a long time, the dollar was good as gold. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, every $35 printed was backed by 1 ounce of gold in a vault. This discipline created the greatest middle-class boom in history. But then, the government got greedy. They wanted the Great Society welfare programs and the Vietnam War. They couldn't afford both, so they started printing more paper claims than they had gold to cover. The French government noticed and demanded their gold back. The run on the bank began. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon went on television and committed the default. He temporarily suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Temporary. It has been 54 years. The window never reopened. That Sunday night, the US dollar ceased to be money and became currency. It became a promise backed by nothing but faith. And just like in Rome, just like in Weimar, once the constraint was removed, the printing exploded. In the decade that followed, gold went from $35 to $850. That wasn't gold becoming 24 times more valuable. That was the dollar losing 95% of its value against reality. This is the crime scene. Look at the charts. Before 1971, when productivity went up, wages went up. The worker shared in the wealth. After 1971, the line split. Productivity kept rising, but real wages flatlined. The wealth gap exploded. Why? Because the new money wasn't earned, it was printed. And printed money always flows to the assets, the rich, not the wages, the poor. We have been living in Act 2 for 50 years. We have printed trillions to mask the rot. But now, with $318 trillion in debt and interest payments exceeding our defense budget, we have officially entered Act 3. The trust is breaking. Module 5 timestamp. 1500. The debt trap. Interest defense. Here is where the history lesson becomes a modern emergency. We are no longer just printing to pay for wars or welfare. We have entered the doom loop. Today, the US national debt is $36.1 trillion. The interest rate on that debt has spiked. We are now paying $892 billion per year just in interest. Let me put that number in perspective. We spend more on interest than we spend on our entire military. We spend more on interest than on Medicare. And by 2034, interest payments are projected to hit $1.7 trillion annually. This creates a mathematical trap. To pay the interest, the government must borrow more, but borrowing more increases the debt, which increases the interest payments, which requires even more borrowing. The snake is eating its own tail. You cannot tax your way out of this. You cannot grow your way out of this. The only option left is the Weimar option. Print the money, dilute the currency, pay the debt with worthless paper. The rest of the world sees this. Why do you think China and Russia are accumulating gold at record rates? Why do you think central banks bought more gold in 2024 than at any time since 1967? They are reading the same history books we are. They know that Act 3 is ending. They are quietly exiting the dollar theater before the building collapses. They are moving from faith-based assets, bonds, to hard assets, gold. And this is where you come in. Because while central banks buy gold, there is another asset, a smaller, more explosive asset, that history shows is the lifeboat for the common man. Module 6 timestamp, 1845, the silver lifeboat, the repricing event. So, where does silver fit into this tragedy? Throughout every currency collapse in history, from Rome to Weimar, people flee to real assets. Gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years, not because of tradition, because they cannot be printed, they cannot be debased, they cannot be created by a politician's signature. Right now, gold is trading around 4,230 per ounce. It is sniffing out the danger, but silver is sitting at 60 That gives us a gold to silver ratio of 67 to 1. Historically, that ratio averages between 15.1 and 50.1. If the ratio simply returned to its historical average of 50.1, silver would instantly reprice to 84. If it went to 15.1, we are talking about $280. But the price isn't the point. The pattern is the point. In Rome, citizens hoarded silver coins to survive the crash. In Weimar, silver bought you a farm when paper bought you a loaf of bread. Silver is currently priced as if nothing is wrong. It is priced as if the $318 trillion debt can be managed, as if the printing will stop, as if this time is different. And that is what they always say. This time is different. They said it in Rome. We are the eternal city. They said it in Germany. We are the most advanced nation in Europe. They say it in America. We are the reserve currency. The pattern doesn't care about your exceptionalism. You cannot sustain $318 trillion in debt against $105 trillion in output. You cannot print your way to prosperity. These aren't opinions. These are mathematical realities. The laws of economics work like the laws of physics. You can ignore them for a while, but you cannot break them. And when they snap back with violence. Silver isn't an investment. It is insurance. It is a bet that history doesn't stop being history just because we have iPhones. It is a hedge against the mathematical certainty that Act 4 is coming. The machine is running. The debt is compounding. The currency is dying. The only question left is whether you will be holding the paper when the music stops, or the metal. I know you feel it in your gut. That sinking feeling every time you look at the checkout screen at the grocery store. The news anchor smiles and tells you the economy is strong. The politicians tell you inflation is transitory, but your bank account tells a different story. It feels like you are being gaslit by the entire system, doesn't it? That is because you are. They rely on your compliance. They rely on you staying asleep, working harder for currency that buys less, hoping that if you just follow the rules, it will all work out. But deep down, you know the rules have changed. You aren't crazy for worrying about the future. You are the only one sober at a party that has gone on too long. This is the burden of awareness. It is lonely to see the iceberg when everyone else is dancing on the deck. But this awareness is also your greatest weapon. You have a choice right now that your neighbors don't even know exists. You can choose to be the victim of Act 4, or you can choose to be the architect of your own rescue. This isn't just about investing or gains. This is about dignity. It is about looking your children in the eye 10 years from now, when the dust settles and the paper illusions have burned away, and being able to tell them that you didn't just watch it happen. You prepared. You protected them. You built an ark of real value while the rest of the world was drowning in debt. Trust your gut. It is screaming at you for a reason. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is pattern recognition. And the pattern is screaming at you. If you want to understand exactly how this machine was engineered to trap you, and the 3 specific moves you need to make to survive the Act 4 transition, you need to see the next video. Subscribe right now. Don't wait for the fire to buy the insurance. Class dismissed.